Hey, everybody. Scott and I fixing our hair before we went live. You'd think we're related, right? So if you're not familiar with Scott Higham, he joins me for his first Drum Talk TV hazing, first time offender, first time victim, guest. He's worked in the realms of progressive rock, pop rock, metal, all kinds of different musicals. He's worked with a guy maybe you've seen on our show, Oliver Wakeman's been on a few times, having recently drummed on Oliver's new solo album, Anam Cara, which is awesome. He also drummed for Pendragon from 2008 to 2014. Eager to talk about that band. I love that band's music. And others he's performed: the Shadowkeep, Clive Nolan Vinyl Destination, the Fabulous Feedback Band. Love that freaking name. Almost anyone qualifies if you've ever played in a club with a crappy sound engineer, right? Not that there's really any out there. Alan Reed, it just goes on and on. Scott, welcome all the way from South Sussex, UK. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Dan. How you doing? Thanks so much for having me on.
Doing well. Excited to have you and talk music, drumming, gear, and everything. One of the things I want to touch on before we get on to the experience of working with Grindmaster Oliver Wakeman, before we get into that debacle, just kidding, and of course Pendragon. Let's talk about something as musicians and drummers that we were talking about in conversation with Steve before we went live. And what that is everyone has a different method of learning. You know, some people learned their instrument, whether it's cello, saxophone, drums, guitar, whatever, in a very academic way. And they're really good sight readers, or they can read charts, or they make their own notes to learn music. I used to be able to do that, but I haven't had to read music in like maybe 30 years or something. And it's kind of rusty. It's like picking up an old language and it just tripping all over myself. But you and I think we have something in common where I'd love to hear from other people watching. Feel free to chime in the comments, folks. And that is that we both have a good ear, and well, I was going to say a good memory. I have a good memory when it comes to music, and that's about it. Like, I don't even remember what day it is or if it's an underwear day. But we talked about just listening to things over and over and over. Talk about your experience with that.
Well, for me, I never learned to read music. I don't know how to read music. Never have. So very similar. Always learned. I learned by ear from a very young age, which has its pluses and minuses. It does mean that I have to listen to things hundreds of times, get them in my head, and I get to absolutely immerse myself in the music and know it. I do write myself kind of my own notation, cheat notes, but very basic, my language. But no, I don't know how to read music. So it's amazing I've had a career in music. But it's been great, actually. I end up learning the bass part, the guitar part, the lyrics. You get the whole thing in your head.
Yeah, see, I think that is critical, whether one can read music really well or not. To me, knowing the lyrics, even if it's in a different language, knowing the phrasing, the notes, it's another instrument, right? So knowing the vocals, the bass, the guitar, keyboards, if there's keyboards, brass, if there's brass, whatever, to me, that's the roadmap. Whereas, because if someone says, start from the part that goes, dun, 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 like, if I only read music, I don't know. I'd have to say, what measure? Where are we starting from? But knowing everyone else's phrasing and dynamics, where there's a key change, even if you don't read music, you can hear a key change. To me, that's been critical. And a big part of how I've learned by ear is knowing what everyone else is doing. Has that helped you as well?
100%. Yeah. What I tend to do is when I'm working with anybody is try and get in their head get the story of what they're trying to tell through music. So by understanding where they're coming from and the story they're trying to tell in that particular song or album or whatever, it actually helps guide my drum parts to complement what they're doing musically on their instrument. And
that's great.
You're immersed more in the whole picture,
rather than just relying on stanzas of written rhythmic music of what the drum part should be doing, right?
Yeah. You can. You'll always get guides.
Yeah.
And most people say, look, there's the guide, but you can go off piste if you want. We want your personality in it. So it by knowing a bit more about the song and what they're trying to do. I personally, I like it. I like to know what the story they're trying to tell. It helps
Yeah.
me and play my parts. As I say, to compliment.
So for me, because of my age, when I was learning all this crazy stuff as a kid, Brain Salad Surgery by ELP, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis, Close to the Edge by Us, name any Rush album, all that stuff. It was all on vinyl, and you couldn't scrub back, and you couldn't just copy a part and paste it over and over so that part would play over and over. For like something like YYZ, when that came out from Rush, when was that, 1980, 81, whatever, it's all a blur to me now, but it was all on vinyl. So listening to YYZ and getting to that fill, wait, what just happened there? You have to pick the needle up, find it, play it back, pick the needle up, put it back, and then I didn't have drums in my bedroom at that time, so I'd run down to the room where my drums are, sit down and go, wait, what was that? Run back upstairs, listen to it. It was madness to learn that way. But if I didn't have the good ear or memory, I never could have learned that way. I would have had to sit there with a pencil, listen to it over and over, notate it out. And to me, it's quicker to just learn by ear. And now I'm not saying, folks, I know everyone's hating on me right now out there. I'm not saying any one way is wrong or right. It's what works best for you. And this is just something that Scott and I have in common.
Absolutely. I've got massive respect for people that can read, because they tend to do it way quicker than I can. They've got the ear as well. They're doing both at the same time. It just speeds up the process, I guess. And I'd love to learn. I'd love to know, but probably too far down the road. But do you remember when I think it was the early 80s when they brought out those hi-fi systems where you could record from your vinyl to tape.
Yeah.
And you could just rewind the tape, and it made learning it so much quicker, I found anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Long before even the YouTube era. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We go way back, right?
Funny. I want to talk about where you started. Like, why drums? Or are drums your first instrument? Do you play anything else?
No, I'm a singer as well. But this all started because my father was a lead singer. So I was brought up with my dad in bands, in cover bands, from the day I was born. And I think my grandmother played piano, and my grandfather's a drummer and a singer. I think it ran in the family, the musical side on my dad's side. So yeah, my dad was a singer. So from a very young age, I used to go and watch rehearsals and watch how he would write his lyrics and learn the vocals in the front room, every week, ready for a gig on a Saturday or whatever. So it was very much in the family. But it was actually my brother who started playing drums first. And of course, being the younger brother, I just wanted to copy what he was doing. So we didn't have drums or anything like that. We weren't blessed to have that situation. So it was literally a pair of sticks on the bed, set out your pillows as if it was a tom or a cymbal, put on your favorite album and drum along and try and work out what they're doing. It was an old school way of doing it. So it was my brother that got me into drums.
Interesting. Hold on one second. Some of that cut out. Steve, give me a thumbs up if that was cutting out for you. I could see Steve in the monitor back in the background. Hopefully it's just on my end. Thanks for being patient, everybody, in case I'm cutting out. Am I cutting out, Scott, for you?
Not for me, no.
Okay, good. Okay. Maybe we're good and it's just on my end. Cool. That's interesting. So you had some musical family influence there. Who are some of your biggest influences as you started to listen to different music, and about what time period was that when you got into your first idols or whatever, people you wanted to emulate?
Well, my father was obviously putting on all this stuff in the 70s. So it was Queen, it was ELO, Led Zeppelin, Rainbow, White Snake, Deep Purple, all the big guys, Journey, all this kind of stuff. So those kind of bands, I was massively influenced growing up. And then my brother is just such a huge music fan. He's one of those guys that's got about 3,000 albums, been to every tour and every concert of every band you've ever heard. He loves music so much. So he was my encyclopedia. So when we got into the 80s, all the heavier stuff like the Iron Maiden and Metallicas and all the rest. And he was a huge Rush fan as well, and Yes, and all this stuff. So he influenced me on that side. But the early stuff was all that kind of hard rock, middle of the road, I suppose you would say. But some of what I consider now some of the greatest bands of all time, I was very blessed to have been born in that era. And my dad, listened to him. I mean, Brain Salad Surgery was on in the car on the way to school.
Interesting. There's a nice mix of music there, and I hear some of it come out in your playing, which is really cool.
Cool.
So I want to go through some of the music that I'm familiar with that you have played. Anam Cara, of course, with Oliver Wakeman. What was that experience like, and how was the process of learning that music? Did Oliver walk you through it, or did you guys get together and he'd play you a bit and then you'd play to it? Did he send you tapes? What was that process like, being that we know he didn't send you charts?
He didn't send me charts, no. And of course, I started with, I don't read music. Don't worry about that. He went, you'll be fine. It started with, I actually recorded an EP for him the year or two before. And we worked together on that. And we got on so great. We just clicked like mates, like buddies straight away. And we loved the way we both worked together. So he would send me pretty much complete songs with ideas and then go, okay, do your thing. And literally it was back and forth. So what I do with this thing behind me is I write all the demos on this, and I can record them, send them over to the artist, whoever that may be. I sent this over to Oliver, and he would go, yeah, love that, keep that. Oh, can you change this little bit? Have you got another idea for this? And so we could really quickly work together, go back and forth with this setup here. And it was very organic. He if he heard something, he would move with, what was right for the track. So it was a really fun experience. Yeah.
Interesting. And how long have you known Oliver? Did you already have quite a relationship before that, or was this a new experience?
It's a funny story, really. I actually met Oliver in 2007 when I was doing the Clive Nolan's musical called She. And we did a live DVD in Poland. And that night, Palace was supporting, and also Oliver Wakeman Band before the musical went on. So I think everyone was recording a DVD that night. We sort of clumped it together as one big show. So that's when I first met Oliver. And I didn't know this. But Oliver told me a couple of weeks ago. He said, do you remember when we first met? I said, yeah, I remember saying hello. He said, no, you came up to me and went, if you ever need a drummer, here's my number.
Oh, wow.
And I don't remember that. I was obviously touting for business.
He mentioned that.
Yeah, and he was like, I kept your number, and I heard what you were doing with Clive after all these years. And then literally, like, God, how many years has that been? 15 years, whatever. And he finally called.
That's awesome. It's a great album too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I honestly don't remember, this is embarrassing, but I don't remember Oliver's answer to this. Does he have plans to take that out on tour? I think at the time Steve and I interviewed him, he wanted to, he just wasn't sure when that might be.
Yeah, we had one show lined up, headlining a festival here in the UK, which we did, I think it was a month ago now.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, and it was we did Summer's End. And it went down a treat. It was absolutely brilliant, phenomenal show. Everyone loved it. Great feedback from it. And as you know, the band were all put together for this album. So it's the first time we'd met on the Friday. Like you were saying, before we went on about rehearsing, we literally had 2 days, Friday and Saturday rehearsing, Sunday night headlining the festival. So that was a bit, everyone was on tender hooks, but we all got on great. We smashed it. It was brilliant. So, of course, since then, everyone's like, okay, we need taking it on tour. And Oliver's like, well, I'd love to. So if we get the opportunity and somebody wants to do this and put this together, 100%, the band are ready, Oliver's ready, and, we'll come and do it.
Was that show filmed?
No, I don't think it was. No.
Okay.
Not from what. Otherwise, No, it wasn't, because we had to put a video. We were doing a video and we were asking, is there any footage? And I don't think they did particularly. No, unfortunately.
Maybe there's a way to put the word out to folks that attended that and kind of assemble something from audience shot clips or something. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, or let's just go on tour and do a DVD.
Funny.
Like, I'll throw that out there like it's really easy to do.
So here's a question for you. Do you like, we talked again a little bit before we went live about, you know, I told you about the thing I'll be doing in June, and there's one rehearsal of 4 hours. You had sort of a similar thing where you had just met the band. You guys had 2 days to rehearse. Do you like that sort of tightrope element? Or if it was up to you, would you rather have a month of rehearsal, or does it not matter? What's your take on that, Scott?
It's interesting. I don't really mind either way. I tend to find it, in an ideal world, you'd have a nice lead up and it'd be nice and comfortable, lots of rehearsals and pre-production and all this stuff. In the real world, I usually get a call going, someone's dropped out. Are you free in a week's time? You know, all that stuff. I remember actually the first time when I played with Samson. Do you remember Samson?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I played with Samson, and I remember him calling me up, saying my drummer was due to land from Chicago and he hasn't turned up. And I was like, okay. And he said, I've got a tour supporting Wishbone Ash. I said, when's it start? He went, tomorrow night. And I was like, okay. And literally, do you remember the old Walkmans? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I got this tape. He goes, and here's the material. And I was on the tour bus listening on the way up to the gig, learning the songs.
Oh, wow.
It was madness. So yeah, a lot of the time these things sometimes come up last minute. Sometimes you get a lead up. I'm easy, you know, with whatever.
Awesome. One of the many bands you've played with, that the little bit of samples I've done of some of the things I wasn't familiar with, I like, but Pendragon really interests me because to me, it's another one of those, I'm going to say, bands that is carrying the torch forward of really some classical elements of progressive rock from the 70s, but it doesn't sound dated. So like some of the stuff I listened to reminded me of older Marillion, Genesis from the 70s, older Yes. What was it like playing in that band? I mean, you were with them for quite a few years, and like, sometimes I'll mention stuff like that and someone will say, no, those weren't any of our influences at all. But it's interesting how sometimes someone from the outside can interpret someone else's music with whatever they're familiar with is what's going to give it their context. You know what I mean? So for all I know, it was Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand influenced. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if to ask Nick, but that's the genius that's Nick Barrett, because he is Mr. Pendragon. He writes absolutely everything. It's all from him.
Wow.
And I do know that he was a huge Genesis fan, and of that era and stuff like that. So but it's influences. He's got his own style. He took it in that direction. But he's always been open to so many different styles of music. He would listen to loads of different stuff. So it was interesting that he wasn't always stuck in that one genre, but there'll always be elements of that progressive side to his writing. So when we say about an outsider, I was a bit like an outsider. I mean, I joined them for the 30-year anniversary tour.
Oh, wow.
So they had a whole career before I turned up.
Yeah.
And of course, listening back to all that stuff, was very progressive and, you know, Genesis-y and that 70s kind of sound, right?
Yeah.
But I, as you know, from some of my playing, I came from the rockier side of things. I'd done a lot of metal stuff, and it was a bit more, because we'll talk about this later, but I'm hugely influenced by Mike Portnoy and Dream Theater, right? He was a game changer for me, right, in '92. So my style kind of went more in that direction. And then when I joined Pendragon, literally luck would have it, Nick said, this new album I'm doing has got this kind of rockier edge I want to put on it, called Pure. This album was called Pure. And we just went, this is going to suit me down to the ground. So when I did Pure and I did Passion. And both of those albums had that more heavier, rockier elements to it. Not completely. It still had the progressive side as well. So what was brilliant about Pendragon was it had that rock side, but it had loads of emotion in the music as well, which I love playing. And people have said, you know, when they watch the DVD, I'm pull faces and I'm just lost in the music, just loving it, you know, whilst playing it. It's just an emotion thing for me. And that's what I loved about Pendragon. You know, the guys are fantastic guys, brilliant musicians, and the songwriting's phenomenal. It's a joy to play.
That's awesome. You know, I love one of the things that's so reminiscent of older music is the long musical interludes, and even the ones without drums. You know, it's just beautiful music, but it's got a lot of what I've heard has a little of everything. You've got your syncopation, you've got your high energy syncopation, it goes into 4, but then you've got your subtleties and just the real delicateness of it. It's like all over the place. And I don't mean that in a sloppy way, of course. I mean in a very artful way of composing music. Sure. And for all of that to come out of one guy is just like, you know, it really speaks a lot to
sections and yeah, there's everything, right?
Yeah,
it's a drummer's dream.
So how much did playing in musicals affect your playing, the way you play now, or what you bring to other projects? Did that affect your playing in a big way, or was it more of bringing what you were already doing to the musicals?
Yeah, if anything, it taught me to water down 100%. That's the one thing that when I started working with Clive and he was like, okay, I know you can do all of this fancy stuff and all the rest of it. That's great. However, as a writer, I've got 40 other instruments on this thing. I've got 6 singers. There's a choir. There's an orchestra. There's a this or that. There's not going to be the space for all that. So I need you to think. In fact, his actual words were, "I need you to play more like Phil Collins." And of course, I'm thinking Lamb Lies, right, and all this stuff. Brand X, no. And he was like, "No, but. I want all the fills nice and simple, nice and big, nothing fast and technical and crazy." And so it was great because it taught me to literally he just wants me to sit in the pocket and complement the music. That's it.
Yeah.
So it was lovely to wear that hat and just play my part for that. And there was the odd moment where he would go, "Okay, you can go for it now, boy." You know.
Oh, nice.
I'd get 8 bars. Off you go. Now back in your box. So yeah, it was a good influence and a good learning process doing that with him.
That's great.
Still do them. He's writing another one, I believe. So yeah, that was what's great about doing the musical side of things.
That's great. It's funny if someone were to say, do this bit like Phil Collins. Well, is that the Susu Studio Phil Collins or the Return of the Giant Hogweed Phil Collins? You know,
exactly.
It's funny.
I know what he meant.
Yeah, you know, it's so odd to me. Well, I guess not if I use my brain, but that's rare. But I do find it peculiar that there's so many music fans that don't know about Phil's like progressive background. They only know him for his pop solo career, if you will, you know, if it's fair to call it that. But I think that's good. I think that shows what a crossover artist he was to be so huge in one arena, no pun intended, but then to make just as big a mark, if not bigger, in a whole other arena where those music fans, a lot of them didn't even know about what was going on back there. You know, it's quite interesting. It says a lot about his musicality.
He's unreal, isn't he? And he used to live up the road from here, apparently, 5 minutes from where I live. Yeah, the guy's a genius. He's unreal. You know what he's achieved, how he's done all of that in his career is amazing and influenced so many people. And we've all, I think most drummers can say that they've taken something from Phil at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a huge influence on me. Not just the Genesis stuff. I love Robert Plant's first 2 albums and what Phil did on those. I just love that.
Yeah.
The drumming on there is so good, and it's not like that sounds like Genesis because it's Phil's playing. It sounds like Phil Collins, which I just love. It's great. Plus that drum sound. See, that's why I still, Scott, have no bottom heads on my big kit. It's all open heads because I love that sound that he had from back in the 70s, that whole concert tom, nothing on the heads to mute him, just a boof, the sound, the tones, the breathing of the drums. I just love that. I have bottom heads on my two smaller kits, but I just love that sound, which leads me to ask you about gear. I see there's a beautiful electronic kit behind you. And before we go into other gear that you play, Scott, help me with this. Why is it that people don't have a problem with electric pianos, electric guitars, electric basses, but so many people have problems with electric drums? What's up with that? Why is that an issue?
Because they're not the same. They're just not. And they never, I'm not sure they ever will be. They're great and they're fantastic at what they can do. But you're never going to beat a piece of wood with heads and cymbals all making one particular sound, and the air that gets live, or when you're around a drum. There's something so organic about that sound that's just, it's almost spiritual, isn't it, when you hear a drummer on a drum kit? This is very precise and nice sounds and does a job. And there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I've got nothing against them at all. And as I say, I use them for demos. I have used it live once or twice and hated every second of it. It was awful. For me, it wasn't the same. And actually, I found that the guitarists were like, yeah, I've got you in my ears, but I don't feel that air. I don't feel that energy when you put that stick into that drum or that cymbal, because as you know, and most drummers out there know, you can play these things with different velocities on a drum kit and really make the whole thing sing as an instrument, which is so hard to get, I think, on an electric kit. I think they're just two different things. What do you think?
It's the volume cut out on my end.
Yeah. What do you think about them?
There he goes back. Yeah.
Are we back? Nearly.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I'm back. Sorry. I was like probably frozen for a moment there and I lost audio for a second, but no, that's great. I think as a drummer / percussionist, it is important to explore the different things that give us different sounds. And, for me personally, I play them differently too, just like as if I were to rearrange my kit differently or use different cymbals altogether. It makes you play differently, which gets me out of my not just comfort zone, but my very narrow lane. I have quite a narrow lane, or rather, I have two very narrow lanes, but they run really deep. And when I do something different, like tune my drums completely different or set them up differently, it makes me play completely differently, which makes your brain work, a little bit differently, which I think is good to do, Same thing with playing hand drums from time to time. I got djembes and doumbeks and whatnot, which make me think differently pattern wise, if you will.
Funny you should say that. Oliver turned up one day to the studio when we were doing the album. He went, I bought a bunch of percussion with me. Would you mind? And he was throwing things at me I've never played or picked up in my life. I was playing a boron on this. The Irish boron.
Yep.
I'd like to apologize to all the boron players out there that do it professionally, because I was winging it big time. But I'll tell you, here's a funny story. He said, I bought some maracas. For a certain little piece. I said, okay, great. And he gave it to me, and I was recording this thing. I was doing the chimes, and I was recording these things. He said, do you know where that comes from? I said, no idea. He went, that's from my dad's album, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1972, was it? He went, yeah, he used it on the album. He gave it to me, and I'm sitting there holding this piece of history, playing this maraca. It's like, that's pretty cool.
Some of those fun surprises that pop up when creating music, right?
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Bella. Let's see if I can get it to show on the screen.
Hi, Bella.
Oh, it's not popping up. At least I don't see it. Bella Lagrisi says, hi, Scott and Dan. There it is. And it might come up 3 or 4 times because I'm pressing the button. Click, 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 click. Steve has been chiming in. Sorry that I missed those, Steve, during those conversations that we were having. If we rewind a bit, Scott, to when we were talking about the show that you guys did with Oliver, Steve is asking how much of the material of that album was played during that festival show.
That's a good question. I believe.
Do you remember?
It was 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
However, we did play Yes songs from the album that had never been played live. From a Page.
From a Page, cool.
Yeah. So we played 2 or 3 songs from 2 or 3 Yes songs, some Oliver songs from his old albums, and I think it was about 3 or 4 from Anam Cara.
Cool. And then Steve also has a question I'll put up here. It says, when playing progressive rock, metal, and pop rock, does it take a bit to adapt as you shift between genres, become second nature at a certain point? That's a good question. How is it for you, Scott?
A good question. I guess 40 years in, it becomes second nature now. Just literally because I've done it my whole life. I don't even think about it now. I just switch between sections. I mean, there's even a jazz section on this album. So yeah, it's for me now second nature. But I think if I went back, I'm sure there was a lot more going on trying to work out, how to play these different pieces. But coming back to what I was saying earlier, that's where people like Mr. Michael Portnoy turned up and went, "This is how you do it, guys."
Right.
Yeah. Thanks to people like him, he managed to marry these two and show us how to do it.
That's great. So now this leads up to the Scott Higham Fun Fact segment. And what I want to ask you, Scott, is, you stay pretty busy as a musician, you have for years, but when you're away from the studio, when you're away from the stage, when you're away from just rehearsing, what is something that you like to do to spend your time doing other than, and you can't use the answer spend time with my family, only because if you have family, of course that's something you like to do, but is there something you like to do that's your thing outside of music?
I'm not allowed to say kids and family. I'm not allowed that, am I? Okay. My thing, I love going I go to the gym quite a lot. I like to work out and keep fit and healthy because I'm not getting any younger. I love playing football, and I love playing golf.
Yeah, you mentioned golf earlier. Yeah. How's your game?
It's okay. I need to get a little bit better. I'm playing off about 15 handicap at the moment, so I need to try and get that down a little bit, but I'm doing all right.
That's great. I played about 63.
Oh, wow.
But that's 63 Fahrenheit. If it's warmer than that, I won't play. At this point, people, I'm sure, are tired of that joke. They've been following us. I pull that out every time.
If he's going around in 63, he should be professional.
Yeah, I'd probably play more like, I haven't played in a while, but last time I played like between 79 and 84. Even when I played, I didn't play enough to get really good at it, but I loved playing because I played with my dad and it was our thing to get out and whatnot. Nice. I haven't played in a long time, but it's a very relaxing sport / game / pastime, and it kind of qualifies for all three, right? You get outside, fresh air, you smell the grass, it's fun.
It's great. I enjoy it.
There's people who say, I don't have the patience to chase a little ball around that. That's really not even the object of the game.
You either get it or you go, what are you doing? You're hitting a ball around grass. What are you for hours? What are you doing? But yeah, once you get the ball, it's cool. Exactly.
I'm going to circle back out of the fun fact segment which Steve will extract for us for something special we're putting together in our membership site. But go back to more like a general interview question. This one does come from producer Steve, and it is, how would you compare the experiences of working with the original bands versus working with cover bands? With both of them, you're learning music, you're playing music, you're performing music, but what are some of the differences that you could think of, Scott, if any, that you would cite?
That's really an interesting question, that.
Yeah, I've never thought of that either.
No, and because what I tend to find is some of I work with some great musicians, but some of the best ones have been in cover bands. They're absolutely phenomenal, and yet they haven't necessarily had an opportunity to do original material. Because obviously the original bands I play with, they're all amazing musicians and they write their own material, and they've gone down that road and had those opportunities, which is brilliant. It's a very interesting question. The differences between the two, not much really, because I see the musicians. It's all about, in here, do you have a professional attitude, regardless of what gig you're at? You know,
Right.
I've got this thing with I play in this band called Vinyl Destination. Actually, it's with Kyle and Amos, who's the bass player with Arena, and Don Stick, who's the guitarist. He's actually played with me when I was in Dante Fox. Both of them are phenomenal musicians, and we always go to any gig and we go, okay, this is our Wembley Stadium. Every gig is our Wembley Stadium. This could be your last gig, make it your Wembley. So if you have that, and I think a lot of original material artists have that, every gig is the best you can possibly be, 100%, give it everything you got. So I think it's a mindset, regardless if you're playing a pub, a club, a wedding, a function, or a stadium, or you're on tour. If you get that right, be the best you can be. That's all you can ask for.
I love that. That's a great answer. Scott, I want to thank you so much for being out with me. We'll do this again. You're welcome to keep us up to date and come on anytime to talk about what you're doing, what you're working on.
So much.
Anything at all. And when you come to the States, we'll have to somehow get together. Hopefully you'll come at least to the left half of the country. And I'm not speaking politically, people. I mean geographically, the left half. Every other political half is welcome here on Drum Talk TV. And folks, thank you for following what we do. Scott, stay on the line with me for just a moment after we say goodbye. Folks, you can follow us on Facebook.com/DrumTalkTV, Drum Talk TV at YouTube, on Instagram, on Vimeo, and our new membership site. Check it out at www.drumtalktvbrilliance.com. And our mothership site is in the middle of getting a makeover, drumtalktv.com. as well. I'm sure I left a few things out, but thanks so much for joining Scott and myself to talk music and prog and metal and musicals and golf. Thanks, everybody. We will be back soon with more.